Uh, that brings us today to our first poll question. If you've been with us before, you might have guessed it is a question that will help Kathy and I know kind of who's showing up to these meetings and helps us all know who's here with us today. So why are you here?
Got about 5 more people we're waiting on. 3, 2, 1. Okay, I'm going to end the polling, share the results.
Great. Looks like a lot of our colleagues on the call today. That's great. Thank you everybody for being here. Like I said earlier, Kathy and I are just happy to talk about advocacy with a nice big group. So thank you. And as you probably know, we are here to talk about the DSP crisis. That is the serious workforce shortage of direct support professionals that is currently impacting people with disabilities and their families, and those organizations like Emmaus and Easter Seals who are supporting those individuals. That's a challenge we're facing, and that's what our advocacy is really geared toward solving. And we've been doing that through the budget process, you might remember from previous calls. And we talk about the DSP crisis and that funding using that word rates a lot. And since we have a couple of legislators on the call, and you may remember Representative Cody Smith on the last call, we talked about this one particular line item called DD rate standardization. That's fancy talk to say that we're talking about reimbursement rates. That's the funding that organizations like ours are reimbursed for the services that we provide to individuals with disabilities. And you may remember also that in Missouri, we've been a little bit mixed up. In fact, the federal government has asked us to correct our action and put us on a corrective action plan to fix some rates that were different based on where an individual lived when they came into services and what year they came into services. And so when we talk about standardization, that's sort of what we're getting at. The other side of that coin is that rates set by the state, this is according to some nonpartisan expert actuarial studies, indicate that the total cost of a person's support is not necessarily covered right now by current rates. And so we're happy to report some success in that department. But just wanted to kind of give us that vocabulary to start out before we talk about some of the great things that we've done so far. So I will pass it over now to Kathy.
Thanks so much, Austin. It's always tricky to do a recap after we've been talking consistently for months and months and months to advocates about this issue and how it impacts you, and you all know that. So thanks for bearing with us on that, just to kind of get everybody on the same page. So we have been advocating for better rates, right? So everybody give a thumbs up or some sort of reaction if you did something since January to contact a legislator and let them know that this issue is important to you. So I know I did. So a lot of you on this call have taken action, right? Have been very active, have had conversations, have done education, and let the people that represent you know that this is important to you and that you need their help. And so let's see how you did. Austin, can you go to the next slide? We just want to show this kind of historical picture related to rates, right? So typically the General Assembly kind of has nibbled around the edges related to funding for our services. Some of those little additions and subtractions have been cost of living adjustments to all rates, right? But see that big green line on the end? See that big boost, that big shot in the arm? That's what you did, and that's what the General Assembly did this year. They made a huge and major investment in our services, and I would say that a lot of the credit goes to advocates on this call and some of the legislators who are also on this call. So we just kind of wanted to show you what a big deal it was in a visual form that the General Assembly took this leap this year. And part of that, let me pause 1 second. Oh, Austin, you can admit people, right? I'm getting a lot of dings down there. We wanted to kind of put together from our perspective what we knew about what you did. And it has absolutely been incredible. Many advocates took action, whether it be sending an email, writing a letter, making a phone call, making a visit, talking about how this issue impacts you, people you know and love, people you serve. And it has made a huge difference. Without things that are described on this slide, the previous slide would not have that big green bar on the right hand side that is so beautiful to see. So congratulations to everybody who was part of this active advocacy season and helped make that impact. You did that. Congratulations. Many of you did that. Austin, you want to go to the next? And we are really happy. One of the things that we want advocates to do is just to be able to connect with people who are making this decision on your behalf. We are very lucky and very honored to have one of the people who was instrumental in making sure that that green bar went way up at the end of that chart, Representative Dirk Deaton. Representative Deaton is from McDonald and Southern Newton counties, first elected in 2018. And, what's really important for us is that he chairs the House Budget Subcommittee on Health, Mental Health, and Social Services, which I believe Representative Deaton is the largest pot of money that any subcommittee deals with, right? That you guys are in charge of appropriating. So very important person in our world, and one of the most knowledgeable people in the entire General Assembly about what we do and the impact that this rate issue has had on us. So we thank you, Representative Deaton, and would love to give you an opportunity to talk to us from your perspective about this issue, this session, and hopefully you'll give us just a couple minutes in case anyone has questions.
Sure. Well, thanks so much for having me. It's an honor to be with you all today, and it's a very kind introduction. I am the chair for the subcommittee on health, mental health, and social services, which we annually appropriate. The General Assembly does through House Bills 10 and 11. What we're talking about today is in House Bill 10, Department of Mental Health specifically, and also serve as the vice chairman of the Standing Committee on Budget, which is the largest committee we have in the House, and I think that speaks to its importance, which you all certainly recognize, as that's where our state tax dollars are annually appropriated every year. And so there's great members of the committee from both sides of the aisle, all across the state, who really spend just an extraordinary amount of time digging in every session to the various budgets and issues, and trying to work hard to prioritize resources with the needs. And it's just a very difficult task. And I think you all have a greater understanding and appreciation for that than even most do. I want to tell you just real quickly, and some of you might have a good grasp of this process, but I think it's kind of important to know, and then I'll speak maybe specifically to kind of the issues that you all face, but as it relates to the larger budget process, it's really it never stops. When we get finished on one budget, the work on the next one really does begin. It starts with the various departments kind of formulating their requests and their budgets, and then in the fall they go to the governor, and then he kind of works with them and formulates his own request and proposal for a budget for the upcoming fiscal year. And then in January, usually surrounding his State of the State speech, he delivers his budget request, including the department requests, to the General Assembly, to the House Budget Committee. And then that's where we start with it. And we go from there and talk with every department and hear testimony, public testimony, and testimony from the departments, and really go page by page through their budget books and try to scrutinize the requests and understand what the needs are and what resources we have available for that year. Then we work through that process through our various subcommittees and then the larger committee. And then we have a work product, a budget that we pass out of the House. It goes to the Senate, and they go through the entire same process in a more condensed period of time. And they come up with their version of the budget, which unfortunately, from a House member's perspective, has differences. They always mess up what we do, it seems to us. We're very proud of the work we do. So they make changes, and then we have to come together and reconcile those changes and agree on, one document, one version that we both ultimately vote on, send to the governor, and hopefully he'll sign those budget bills soon. And then the state's fiscal year starts on July 1. So the state's budget year runs from July 1 to June 30th. So we just finished the fiscal year 22 budget, 2022. That's what we're talking about here. But that actually starts on July 1, 2021, and then runs to June 30th, 2022. So that's just a little bit of an overview of the process. Now, specifically as it relates to DD rate standardization, and you all, I'm sure many of you could give a better accounting and analysis of that issue than even I can. But I do feel, as through many of you, of the folks on this call, your help, you've educated me on this this issue, and it's one we've heard as much or more about, frankly, than any budget issue there is in the whole $35 billion state budget, all departments, and you all can be proud of that. And I think that was mentioned earlier on the call about all the outreach you do. And you all have done a good job on that, even in some creative ways that I've not necessarily seen before with how people have reached out. So that's a credit to you, and I think it certainly has made an impact. And I know you all work with Erica Leonard and John Barget and Associates. Many of you probably know them, and they do a great job for you in the Capitol, making sure that we understand, kind of the challenges you're facing and what the needs are, and what you all are seeing, out there on the on the ground level in the trenches, so to speak. And I think the General Assembly recognized, and specifically the House, we put a great emphasis on this issue. Knowing that it was a problem, we are on the corrective action plan from CMS that they said, we had a few issues. And one, just the fact of we have providers across the state that may be serving the same acuity level of an individual and getting different rates. And that they told us is not okay. And it's not. It's really not. And it's unfortunate we ever got to that point or position. And I don't think it was so much conscious as just happened over, a number of years. But it was unfortunate we ever found ourselves in that position. So that was something that had to occur. And in order to do that, and I think to do it in a kind of fair and equitable way, new resources had to come to bear, and new dollars. And a lot of those are going to be federal dollars, but a big number as far as from kind of the state budget committee or the state budget and the House Budget Committee in terms of requests. It's pretty large request as far as general revenue dollars, kind of the money that is most fungible that we can spend on anything. It was pretty sizable ask there as well. So that made for a challenge, but I think it's something that from the beginning, most of us recognized was something we really this year needed to tackle. And you might recall, going back to the governor's request, what he asked for originally. I know we all were hoping to do more, and thankfully we did do more, because it was less than $10 million in general revenue, state dollars, and there's a federal match to that that's much greater. And he came back throughout the process, which was kind of unique, with a governor's amendment, kind of an additional request, and asked for another 40 or so million dollars. Again, you might recall. And then in the House budget, we took that and we incorporated both of those, and we added even some additional dollars, a few million more in House Bill 21 that represented the totality, getting close to $60 million, what we dedicated to the DD rate standardization. Of course, it went to the Senate. They used some different funding sources, and they used a little different dollar amount. And so we did have to come back together and reconcile that. But we ended up with a number, as you all are well aware now at this point, of something a little under $60 million in the state portion, general revenue portion. And then we have a large federal match to go with that of new dollars, which I know is going to make a great impact and it'll make a difference for years to come. Really needed to happen, and that number that we pinned it at for FY22 is actually what CMS told us was kind of at least the bare minimum of what we needed to get to kind of get them where they didn't have us on their bad list. And so they actually gave us a number of years to do that. And by getting it accomplished in FY22, we kind of came in ahead of what they said we absolutely had to get it done by. So I think that's another thing that we took some pride in, being able to kind of not have to chip away at that over 2 or 3 years, but kind of just going ahead and getting it taken care of, kind of getting our house in order. Now we can move forward from here and look to what the needs and the resources available will be for future years. Now, one thing that I didn't really think this necessarily would be the case, but after hearing from several of you, I can understand the concern. I want to speak specifically to the funding source for that state portion. And in the House version of the budget, we had originally used mostly general revenue dollars, which is what it is. It's got to be general revenue or general revenue kind of imitation look-alike is what we often refer to them as, if they're not specifically general revenue dollars. Means we can use them for that, even if they're coming from a different source. We can use them in any way we want. But the Senate used a little different funding source, and we ended up going with their position on that. And they used what we're referring to as the HCBS Enhanced FMAP. Now, I'll try not to go too deep into the weeds here, but that enhanced FMAP is the kind of the percentage of the reimbursement that we get from the federal government for Medicaid items. And in the American Recovery Plan, there was an enhanced FMAP in kind of more dollars that they're giving to the state of Missouri, but it has to be used for home and community-based services type initiatives. So it's somewhat unique in that it just can't be used for absolutely anything. So it's somewhat limited, but this is one thing it could be used on. And so it seemed like a very good use of those additional resources we're getting from the federal government, that kind of additional match that we're getting. So it made perfect sense to do that. The Senate, I think, kind of had some better information. We had a better comfort level when they worked on the budget. And so it seemed like the right thing to do. Now, one thing we all recognize and know is that enhanced kind of FMAP, those HCBS enhanced, that's kind of hard to say, enhanced FMAP dollars, we don't anticipate lasting forever, okay? And so we're going to have to come back and backfill that or replace that ultimately with general revenue dollars, true general revenue dollars. But I think what's important to note is, it was certainly, I think, the House's intention and what we showed we were willing to do this year is, if not for that enhanced HCBS FMAP dollar availability, we were prepared this year to use general revenue. And so while appropriation bills, budget bills, are unique from other statutes in that they are only good for 1 year. There's an expiration date on them. We appropriate for 1 year at a time. So as one member of the House of Representatives, one member of the Budget Committee, I can't make promises about future years, but I do think it's our intention to come back, and this isn't thought to be a one-time thing. This is something we anticipate will be ongoing, just like other programs are. And so hope that was somewhat clarifying as to kind of the thought process and what went into that decision-making process, and kind of how we're looking at least from my understanding perspective, going forward as well. So hopefully didn't take up too much time there, more than you wanted to give me. Happy to take any questions if we have time for that, or if you want to do that, or if not, I can be done. And just again, appreciate, I know we have a lot of different folks on the call, but appreciate what you all do, and just realize the importance and value of it, and appreciate having the opportunity to spend some time with you today.
Thank you so much, Representative. I think if you don't mind, we'll open it up for a few minutes to questions. And I just have particular appreciation for that last part related to the intention of switching that back to GR. Some of us can lower our blood pressure medicine just a smidge this weekend because you said that. So thank you very much. That's very nice. Questions? Wendy?
Representative Deaton, my name is Wendy Sullivan. I'm the CEO of Easter Seals. We provide services to people with disabilities all over the state. First of all, thank you for being here. Most importantly, thank you for being our champion in the legislature. We're not probably the most fancy cause that many people don't even understand what we do if they haven't been touched by it, but we so appreciate your willingness to learn about the issues and then to represent our needs in the budget committee. It just means the world to us. I will tell you that I have been doing this for 40 years, which is unbelievable to me, but this is the worst staffing crisis I have ever seen. Yesterday, I met with a family to tell them that we were going to have to discontinue services to their daughter that we've served for 23 years because we couldn't find the staff to work with her. It's just heartbreaking. But with this appropriation and this standardization increase, we have some hope that our services will be able to continue, that we'll be able to pay our staff closer to what they're worth. Yeah, and we just owe so much to you for that. So thank you.
Well, Wendy, I appreciate that. And, I'm just one of the many, and many different folks, worked on this and deserve the credit. There's a lot of folks, and you all for your advocacy, certainly. And I'm certainly familiar with Easter Seals. Greg Kramer, who I see is on the call here, has reached out as much as anybody, and to me directly, and we've gotten to know each other pretty well. So I hope that this is helpful. I really do, and I understand and appreciate the labor situation, and unfortunately, it's, I think, become more acute recently, and that's not unique to you all. I've heard it from employers in my district, in the private sector, across all sectors. And there's a lot of, I think, things going into that. I'm hoping that situation is improving as things are opening back up and people are feeling more comfortable about re-engaging in the labor force. There obviously was increased unemployment over the last year due to the pandemic, and increased unemployment benefits, frankly, which paid more than what many people were able to offer in wages, both in private and public sectors. And so that, I think, has created challenges for employers. I do think that situation, I hope, is going to, improve significantly soon. And again, hopefully, these additional resources will, allow you to kind of address that as well. So it'll be neat to see where we're at, I think a year from now, and I'm hopeful we'll all be in a better place.
Does anybody else have a question for Representative Deaton? Feel free, you could unmute yourself or drop a question in the chat. Okay, it seems that nobody has questions, which means we have provided all of the information anyone has desired and done so clearly. So thank you so much, Representative Deaton. I will say, we don't want to take up any more of your time than necessary, but the next portion of our call is Missouri legislative trivia. And so I would expect you would excel at that if you were to join us. So feel free to stay on. We totally understand if you need to hop off. It's a beautiful day, and we hope you enjoy it. And thank you so much for being with us.
Awesome. Well, I'll try to stay on and listen a little bit longer, but again, you all have a good weekend, and thanks for having me, and look forward to talking again with you soon.
Thank you. Okay, so it's not all fun and games, but sometimes it's a little bit of fun and games. So we have the nerdiest batch of trivia to play with you all during our celebratory wrap up for this legislative session. So hopefully you think this is as fun as Austin and I think it is. And for the legislators on the call, I guarantee you will, or at least you should probably get all of these correct. So Austin's gonna share a question with you on his screen. I'm gonna put up a poll with some potential answers and we will see how you do. Austin?
Great. So the first question is, there are 132 representatives that make up the Missouri House. How many bills were filed, House bills, that is, were filed this legislative session?
We've got about half of the answers in. They are still rolling in though, we see. Quite the spread. Close the polling in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, I'm going to share the results and then Austin's going to tell you the answer.
The answer was D. 1,449 House bills were filed this legislative session.
We have 5 lucky participants who got that correct. This is all for bragging rights. So congratulate yourself if you were one of the 5 who got that correct. Okay.
Next question. There are 32 state senators. How many Senate bills were filed this legislative session?
We've got a little more than half in. We're going to close polling in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, and here's what most people said, 478. Austin?
And the correct answer was 630.
630 pieces of legislation for 32 people, folks. Isn't that amazing?
Those
Isn't this
state
great,
senators, they stay busy.
This is all like a dinner table conversation that you can bring up over the weekend with your friends and family. I'm sure they'll find it very fascinating. They'll think you're quite brilliant, as you are, because you have joined us here today. Okay, next question.
So out of all of those bills, 2,079 of them, how many actually crossed the finish line and passed? Now we're still waiting on the governor to sign a few of them. So
yeah, these are the ones that made it through the General Assembly and are awaiting governor action. We got a little more than half, closing in 5, 4, 3, 2. Ooh, can you feel the anticipation? I can. 1. All right. Most people thought
243. Wow, the answer is 65 bills actually crossed the finish line. So think about that, folks. 2,000 bills out there, 65 lucky winners got the golden ticket.
So as you can see, it's a big, big deal when something passes. Okay, we ready for the next?
I'm ready. So 6 million residents here in Missouri. We know that the state budget funds things like social services, education, corrections, infrastructure, and more. What is the total amount of the Missouri state budget for next year?
Oh, and we've got in the chat from Representative Meredith, only 48 bills were fully passed that weren't appropriation bills. So correct. Most. Thank you for adding that, Representative. Okay, we got more than half. We'll close in the total amount of the Missouri state budget. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. U.S. bills since 1994, other than during COVID. Okay.
Wow, that's good. That's good trivia, Representative.
That is good.
I just learned something. The answer in our state budget, 35 billion with a B.
And I
Good
bet
job, group.
Representative Meredith or Deaton could tell us how many of those are state dollars, how many are federal, how many the General Assembly actually has control over spending, all of those kinds of things. All right, just 2 more questions. Let's see here. This is a fun one, I
Mhm.
think.
So out of 132 members of the House, what is the most common name of a House member? Angela, Mike or Michael, Todd, Jane, or Bill and William?
Peter or Dirk were not options. Sorry,
Unfortunately, no.
Representative. Didn't even get close. Right, we have our answers and survey says,
Good job, folks.
very good, very good. There are, how many people named Michael? 9?
According to the slide, 9 House members.
Oh, I see,
named
9, yes.
Michael, but I don't know that I can name. Well, I can name a few of them. But all right, one last question. This is back to the state budget. So we're talking about revenue. It's the money that comes into the state for the General Assembly to appropriate or spend. What is the largest source of funds or revenue for the state of Missouri? Is it corporate taxes, sales tax, individual income tax, personal property tax, or charitable donations? Anybody on the development team?
So I can see the results coming in, and so far, nobody seems to think that people are making charitable donations to the state of Missouri. Oh, I'm sorry, that's not true. Somebody does. Okay, and let's share the results.
Good guesses out there. The correct answer is individual income tax.
Yep. This is a you paid for it. So I hope that some of that was as fun for you as it was for us to put together, frankly. And thanks for playing.
Yeah, thanks. That was good. I hope you learned something. Like Kathy said, bring it up at dinner tonight. All your family members or friends will think you're smart. All right, so moving on. So happy to have Representative Peter Meredith join us today. I'm a proud former constituent of Representative Meredith, spent a good 4.5 years in his district, and also happy to say that Representative Meredith and my wife go to church together, sing in the choir together. So, Representative Meredith has been really accessible to us all year. Another leader on the budget committee, ranking minority member. He's been in office since 2016. And I'm so happy that he's going to talk to us a little bit about the session and about the importance of advocacy. Representative Meredith, I'll stop sharing my screen and let you take it away.
Thanks, Austin. Thanks for having me. Nice to be talking to you all always. Got to do that a bunch this session with the unique need that we talked a lot about. So a couple things. First of all, on the trivia, I think I'm the only Peter in the house, and Dirk is the only Dirk in the house. Last year, I'm betting that Jeff would have been the #1 name, but it depends if you allowed for multiple spellings. So I don't know if that qualified this year. Forgive me, I'm in dad mode today, so back from session and transitioning back to more casual clothing and such. So it's not because I don't take this seriously, but I figured none of you would hold it against me. So you wanted me to talk about advocacy a little bit, and I think that advocacy is especially important when we're talking about the budget, and something that a lot of people don't really recognize the importance of. The budget is, without a doubt, the most important thing we do in the House or in the Senate for that matter, but the #1 role of the legislature, the only thing we have to do every year is approve a budget. As you see, this year we had an extraordinarily low number of bills passed with only 48 bills, 65 bills, but all but 48 of them were the budget bills that we have to pass every year. And that is really where a bulk of the work goes in as well. I can tell you the budget committee spends day and night. Some years much more so than this year, frankly, where we're there late into the night for weeks on end. It's a much different experience for those on the budget committee being in the legislature than those that are not. And that's because obviously we fund a lot of important things, not just what you all are talking about today. And they're all very complicated, and we got to make tough decisions, especially when our revenue is not quite where some of us would like it to be. With your particular cause here and the specific need for the rate standardization request this year, I think it was made all the more obvious how important and effective good advocacy can be. This really was the issue that I think got more attention and more conversation in this legislative session than anything else in the budget. Every year there is some big item like that gets a lot of attention. This was really the one this year, and I would say that is because of the work that you all put in, and because it is such an important need right now. Look, the crisis we get is real with staffing, and I would disagree, of course, with Representative Deaton and some of his analysis of how we got here, but I think we all recognize that here we are. And personally, I'm pleased that we got where we did in the budget this year. Thanks largely to the Senate, honestly, getting that dollar amount up to where it was. Even when the House increased it with House Bill 21, as Representative Deaton mentioned, we still only got to 95% of the required amount that we have to get to by next year, which was very frustrating for some of us that looked at the amount of money that we have right now. Including actually being 18% up in revenue from last year, just state dollars, not counting all the extra federal dollars that we have right now, which by the way is $5 billion. But we're up 18%, and our revenue estimate, what our budget is based on, only projected being up around 13%. So we actually have a lot more money to work with, and I was personally frustrated that we didn't actually get more money from general revenue into this item. Specifically, I know a lot of folks on my side of the aisle were pushing for the $89 million request, which was significantly higher than the roughly 60 we got to, in order to make sure that our direct care providers can actually be paid $15 an hour. It is my belief that keeping up with the bare minimum isn't going to fix this crisis. It's only going to extend it for longer. And frankly, people in this difficult work, as you all know, and difficult and valuable work, mission-driven work largely, ought to be paid living wages. And I don't think keeping up with the bare minimum of minimum wage is sufficient. And so I'm not willing to blame the increase in the minimum wage as the problem here. The problem is we aren't prioritizing and putting enough value on the people that do this work. I suspect you all agree with that, and I think that we've got a long road to go to keep advocating for this. So while this is celebratory, I think for all of you in really accomplishing a big funding win this year, that advocacy is not over. And we really need you to keep telling us that. You know, I may not be the one in my seat even next year or the following year, and there are different people every year that are coming in without institutional memory, which means the conversations have to keep happening. But even the people like me and Dirk who have been talking with you all year, we need you to keep pressing us to make sure it stays a priority. Because as I said, there are a whole lot of things in this massive budget that we're dealing with, and everybody thinks that their item is a priority. And in a lot of cases, they're right. And so if we don't have active attention being pointed at this one thing, it's likely to get forgotten about. And I will tell you, in my 5 years in the legislature, social services frequently do get the short end of the stick. And each year it seems like we are forced, falsely in my opinion, to choose between different important and essential social services. My first year, it was a big fight between whether we would provide $35 million for rate increases, or actually preventing a rate cut for consumer-directed services and for nursing homes, or we would see a cut to the tax credit, the circuit breaker tax credit, that would cut out low-income renters from receiving, in many cases, the only bit of cash that they get all year to be able to spend on necessities that may not be included in their nursing home or whatever else it might be. That's a choice that is brutal to make. And it's a terrible thing to have to make. And in my view, the big conversation that has to keep happening is not just, can we fund this one item? And in a year like this year, the answer had damn well better be yes, because we have the money to fund these things. But there will come another year when we don't. And that's because we keep cutting what you just saw was the largest portion of our state revenue, our income tax. And again, this year, we addressed some really important revenue things like raising the gas tax from the lowest in the country, because last year we had to borrow $30 million from general revenue to pay for transportation. And that still didn't get us anywhere near the needs that we have on transportation and roads and bridges. So that gas tax increase helps there, but it still doesn't get us to where our general revenue has helped for all these services that are competing with each other. But this year we also addressed a Wayfair tax, which is a fix that also we were the last in the country to finally do, to make sure that we're properly collecting our online sales tax. And as people are shifting their buying patterns to online more and more, it's really important that we have that collection mechanism. Unfortunately, of course, the legislature decided that if, in order to pass that, the Conservative caucus insisted that there be another tax cut to the income tax rate. And that's another 0.1 every year. We're talking 7 more 0.1 decreases in our income tax rate. So this bill ended up costing us an estimate of $300 million a year by the time it's fully implemented. So that's $300 million when we're fighting, as I just explained, in a tough year like my first year, over $35 million between one important service or another pot of money that the same people depend on. This year, we also saw this choice put in front of us. And frankly, you all were at the center of it, being pitted against the Medicaid expansion conversation. Now, that was an especially frustrating one for me because I think many of you may agree that Medicaid expansion would actually provide us more money in our budget to be able to spend on things like the rates that we reimburse you all at. It would have provided an extra $1.5 billion over the next 2 years in just federal dollars we could use for anything. And it also brings in $2 billion a year to go toward healthcare that leads to savings as people shift in populations. I won't get into all the details on that, how that happens, because it's complicated. But every other state that's expanded has seen cost savings and new revenue from those dollars coming into our economy. Because we didn't do that, I'm concerned that that's going to leave us with even less money in future years. But what we were presented with, particularly in the House, was an option between either we fully fund Medicaid, including expansion that's now part of Medicaid in the Constitution, or we can pay for things like DD rate standardization, as well as a number of important things like mental health care and other services that the House cut. The House said, we're not going to spend this money unless we don't approve Medicaid expansion. We could use your help and advocacy in all of this big picture conversation, as far as I'm concerned, because as you know, the people that work for you and the people that you provide services to depend on all of these things, not just what you do. Frankly, if we're paying below living wages, folks there are going to be in that expansion population, most likely, that is also in need of quality healthcare. And it would save a lot of employers money if they're not also having to provide healthcare in some of those cases as well. So there is a whole lot that fits in these puzzle pieces that come together. And it's helpful when advocates can see that big picture while also stressing the importance of your very specific need. So all that to say, it was a tough budget year. Overall, a relatively successful budget year because we had money. We still didn't appropriate a large amount of the money that we have. We've got about $5 billion that we're still working with. I would suggest that you may consider advocating in the short term, even in the next couple months, for getting the rates to where we want them to be, to that $89 million, with some of these one-time dollars that we have. And then we'll address how we do that with general revenue in future years, but at least get people paid what they need to get paid now to move forward. That conversation is likely to start over the summer and over the interim. So as you're talking to people like Representative Deaton or Representative Smith, that is a really good conversation to have with them about ways that we might be able to use this money, even as a long-term savings pot, to support some of these increases that need to happen. Now, I will tell you, I think largely thanks to the work you all have done, Representative Smith and Representative Deaton, who carry the most weight by far in the House. Representative Smith gets largely all of the control of the budget in the House. If he understands, which he seems to, the need for these pay increases, even if he blames minimum wage or something else for it, he may be more willing to prioritize this going forward and getting these wages to where they're competitive, because simply paying enough or reimbursing you enough to cover minimum wage isn't enough to make it competitive when you've got difficult jobs and at low wages, and people could go find easier jobs in many cases that pay as much or more. And I know that a lot of folks will still do it because they care about the mission, but it's a lot to ask of people, and expecting to be fully staffed at that rate is going to be hard still. So I'm happy to answer questions or talk about anything else you want to. I don't want to just gab on though, unless I'm in a direction y'all are looking for.
Thank you so much, Representative. That's really helpful to paint that picture of, like you said, all of the puzzle pieces that fit together, the way that those billions of dollars, are sometimes both-sized and pitted against, program versus program, or important cause versus important cause. So really helpful to keep us focused on the bigger picture, and then to give that short-term advice too is awesome.
And I should add with the Medicaid expansion, a lawsuit was filed yesterday on it. You may have read about a little bit. I think it has a very good chance of success. If in fact we are forced to move forward with expansion, as I think is likely based on the constitutional language, that will draw down a significantly larger enhanced FMAP, what Representative Deaton was talking about earlier, an enhanced amount of federal dollars, that $1.5 billion roughly over the next 2 years. That is really something that I think there is a strong case to be made, ought to be invested in healthcare. And healthcare would include direct care, especially direct care that helps keep people from ending up with more expensive healthcare costs down the road. So throwing that out there too.
Thanks for saying that. Any questions for Representative Meredith in the chat? Or
Representative Meredith, Wendy Sullivan from Easter Seals. Proud to be living in your district and have you representing us in Jefferson City.
Thanks.
You're so consistently an outspoken advocate for people who don't have a voice in Jefferson City. And I just want to tell you how much that means to us. You seem never get to be discouraged. At least it doesn't show.
This year was a tough one for me on that front, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm sure it was. You're just very determined and persistent. I'm just curious how you keep that up. Yeah.
If I'm honest, I don't know how much longer I can. But I do, because it's my job. And we have to keep fighting for what I believe is right and what I believe people depend on. If I don't, I mean, I appreciate you saying that I speak for the people that don't have as strong of a voice often. That is my goal. And if I don't, that means they don't have a voice. And so, and it's not just me, there are a lot of us in the House that I think are doing a really outstanding job of speaking up, of fighting, of not giving up, no matter how difficult the odds seem on any given day. And I'll be honest, as difficult as this year was, personally, and also with the Medicaid expansion fight in particular, we came out with a lot of success. More than I've seen in previous legislative cycles, both in things that I think would have been bad for people that didn't make it across the finish line, but also in pushing for a lot of really good things, things in adoption and foster care, children's services, a lot of really important things in the budget, like your items, like public defender money. So we look for the successes where we can get them, and live to fight another day. I always figure as hard as it is for us when we lose a fight, it's a whole lot harder on the people who are hurt by that outcome. And so that helps keep into perspective the need to keep going.
Well, thank you. We appreciate you so much. Really makes a big difference for a lot of people. I know it's a big job. It's a big sacrifice to serve in Jefferson City. So
Well,
thank you.
You all know about sacrifices in work, so I won't pretend to to have the expertise on that.
Great. Well, thanks so much, Representative and Wendy, for sharing that perspective as well. So really, and that's a wonderful segue for us as we shift with the last 5 minutes of the call, assuming there's no more questions for Representative Meredith. Toss them in the chat if you've got them, or use that raise hand.
You can always text me if you've got a private question too, or Facebook message me.
Thank you for that open door. Appreciate it. And I've taken advantage of that. So we're going to actually shift gears as a call with our last remaining time to lift up gratitude as a way to advocate. And so we've created through that platform that we've been using a lot, Voter Voice, we've created an opportunity for those of us on this call to click a link and send a thank you note to your representatives for the work that they did on the budget this year and on those 65 pieces of legislation, 48 of which were not budget related. That's important work. So we're going to switch it over to sharing my screen. And Kathy, could you post the link in the chat?
Yeah, I also want to add, when a lot of you raised your thumb in the beginning of a call that said you sent a note, you asked somebody to do something for you, right? And think back to kindergarten when you asked somebody for something and then they gave it to you and somebody said, now what do you say, right? We say thank you. And legislators don't sometimes feel that full loop, right? They get bombarded with requests and I don't know, maybe hate mail or, all kinds of things. But we want to make sure that they know that what they did is going to impact us. We appreciate that. We followed it through to its logical conclusion. We know if they did or didn't do what we asked them to do. So it's a gratitude piece and an accountability piece and an action piece. And if you've been on these calls with us before, we always take action together, right? Talking is good. Understanding is good. Action gets us the investment that we need and the understanding that we need. So I'm going to put that link that Austin mentioned into the chat. If you click on that link, you'll be taken to Easter Seals website where you'll see, if you've sent an email through the system before, a form that you can fill out to submit. And you can add any personal information that you want. There's some preloaded messages there that you can feel free to use or to change. They're very simple that says, hey, I know the General Assembly did this and I asked you to do it and thank you. This was important. Thank you, Representative Meredith. So I would ask you just take a few minutes and click and thank a legislator. I'm telling you, they do not get very much appreciation. They do not get very many thank yous. It helps us and it helps you stand out as a different kind of constituent, as a constituent who pays attention, who has appreciation, and as, like I said, followed this issue all the way through to its logical conclusion. So I will keep putting that in there. So it is at the top of everyone's chat. And that is also available on Easter Seals website. And we'll go out with the recording of this call and the follow-up that will come later. You want to wrap us up?
Sure. Thanks, everybody. As Representative Meredith helped us to remember, our work is not done. And so he helped to provide that timeline for us. That's some insider baseball that even over the next couple of months, the legislative our legislative friends will be working to allocate some of that additional federal dollars and some other important things. And so as we move forward, we'll send out those thank yous today, but we will continue, Kathy and I, to keep you informed and to provide more opportunities to plug in the future. And so we know, for instance, there's some really important federal legislation happening around home and community-based services. And we're working with some of our federal partners, either at Easter Seals National or NCORE, to maybe meet with us to talk about some of those federal opportunities for our advocacy and our engagement. So round of applause for the important work that we did this year on the state side. That's not over, but we're going to keep on keeping on. And please keep your eyes tuned to your inboxes for Kathy or my name. And thank you for being a part of this awesome success. We got a lot of work to do moving forward, but gosh, we're so happy for how far we've come. So thank you all.
And congratulations to you. It worked. You did it. You asked
Right.
the legislature for something and then they did it. It's amazing. It almost never happens. You saw only 48 bills passed. They almost never do what people want, but they did. And you notice that both the Democrat and the Republican, who are most important for us on budget, both said they heard from you. They got contacts about this. I mean, it's a huge testament to all of the things that you've done. And so it's just absolutely spectacular and a real success story this session. But there's more to do. So we're gonna keep putting opportunities in front of you to do more and more and more. So
Great, thank you.
have
2
a great
thumbs up,
weekend.
and we'll see you next time. Okay. Bye, everyone.